people have a negative connotation towards reserves. Communities struggle with the concept of reserves because a lot of the times reserves were proclaimed, people were forcefully removed from areas, or they're now excluded from traditional hunting and farming areas. And the biosphere is actually quite the opposite of a reserve. It is not a fenced in area, it is an open system where people live and work, but its focus is sustainability. It's actually the opposite of a reserve.
How do we take all these very complex social problems, water problems, conservation, development, and logistical support? So we need to get that complexity and sort out problems. Not pointing fingers, it's about looking, we've got a problem here, where's the solution?
A biosphere is all-encompassing. It encompasses the triple bottom line approach and the true sustainability model of economic growth, social growth, and all based on natural capital. And that should be applied right throughout. One cannot separate anything in a biosphere reserve from anything else.
That battle between development and conservation has been going on all of my lifetime. And gradually I thought, hang on, these other guys have got a point. Socially, the country needs economic development. Biosphere reserves came into South Africa in the 90s. And I thought, hell, here possibly is the solution to this insoluble problem.
We sit with this immense biodiversity, which needs protecting, and is hugely threatened. Water comes into our biosphere, and when it leaves the biosphere, it's highly polluted. So we have a responsibility as a source of 7 rivers to try and get the water running out of the biosphere as pure as it came into the biosphere. We're producing, I think last year, about 16,000 trees to fix the rivers, but then it goes further than that. We've got to sort out the social problems. So the way we tackle it, we look at the educational side. So how do we educate people? How do we train them to get jobs beyond living where they are? Find people, educate them, get them a trick, everything else, but where do they go then? So we've managed to get funding to put a lot of people through FAGASA courses, which is Field Guides Association in South Africa.
This was the best course ever. The best experience of my life, I could tell you, really. We didn't learn just about stuff or just about the nature, but you learn more about yourself. Simple things you forget.
For like 10 years or 16 years maybe, I haven't had the opportunity to just go to class and just sit down and just learn, and everything else in the background, put it aside. So that it's given me the first time going on our theory practical, the first time I ever had 12 days of just focus.
There's big change. I mean, even now the projects that we're having, they were not there many years back, because the environment, the way it was not as bad as it is now. So every now when you go to the community, there's more issues coming up, and hence now you're seeing all these projects popping up everywhere, trying to say, hey, how can we best manage this? Socially as well, the more people crowded in one area, the higher the needs are. An environmental monitor is a person who every single day interacts with the community and knows what's happening in the community and has been capacitated with information that they can share. So we've got KTC as an umbrella, and we've got the data collectors, which is me, one of them. And our jobs is to link with the host institution organizations, you take a left, host institution organizations, and the EMs. Now all the EMs, they are working, as much as they are paid by K2C, we don't tell them what to do. The hosts tell them what to do. So they are for the goal and purpose of the host. So if that host is dealing with gardens and schools, that EM will be doing gardens and schools. And because of that network, there's that trust. So we learn from each other.
My heart is in communities, so I've seen a lot of the issues that communities face. And to have a biosphere that looks at the bigger issues. So for example, cattle and that red line and being able to trade in cattle, or looking at restoration in big areas, or tying together fundamental, like important families and chieftainships, is being able to look at this area in a bigger context than individual NGOs. So we all operate in our little sphere of influence, and we kind of spin around like little isolated things, and there's all of a sudden now almost a bigger umbrella organization that can see where we fit in and will pull us in when it makes sense.
What we're basically doing is thinning the bush in such a way that we have got good grazing. The main purpose is just to have a good grass cover, because as you can see now, we have just came from the drought. So we're doing this for improving the cattle. So because if you've got a good grazing, then you know that your cattle is going to look fat, and then you'll be able to sell them to the market, and then you will get good price for that, because actually this is a livelihood for the surrounding communities.
We try not to interfere a lot with what's happening there. So our job is to just support, monitor, and check everything from far. Because at the same time, as much as we're creating job, we're also capacitating the EMs so that somebody can also move into a higher rank or higher position.
From the Biosphere's perspective, if there's even a small job creation aspect to it, then it's something we try and support as much as possible.
Well, essentially they're looking for regrowth, so they're taking off the bark of the stumps, and if there's signs of regrowth, sometimes it's just dry and it flakes off, but then they have to spray, and they spray very tightly on the location.
And we played a role in the beginning of surveying the attitude of the farmers about linking the national park all the way on the shore right down to the Blouberg conservation area. So it's making stewardship agreements with the landowners so that that is going to be looked after in perpetuity for movement of processes in the view of climate change.
It's all about it's protecting the core biodiversity areas, but as Rana says, it's looking about the larger processes, making sure that as much as possible those core areas are buffered, and that if things affect it, such as the effects of climate change, that the animals can have the room to adapt, to change, to move.
The underlying word is sustainability. So it's to take the people in the city doing what they do to try and have that be as sustainable as possible environmentally. For instance, organic gardening on rooftops, etc. That spreads that message. And then in the agricultural zones, to have people do conservation agriculture, use grey water and conservation principles in farming, and then obviously the protected areas protected. But then there's a line you can draw from protection right through to in the city, that the people conform to a lifestyle of sustainability. Now, in terms of the map and all the physical features, it's designated as from year to year, but that's what it comes down to, is if what a biosphere is how people view where they are and what they do.
I think there is a slow awakening. I think there is a growing movement of change. I think people are restless and feeling that they want to feel good about what they do. They want to make a difference in their way. But I do also feel that there's a level of confusion, that they I want to do the right thing, and what is the right thing, but I don't know where to start. It's also about realizing how you can affect change on a local level. And living in a small town on the garden route, it's fantastic because you have a small number of schools, from township schools that are struggling with not enough teachers and too many children in the classroom, to high-end schools where the teachers are being paid very different salaries. And children living in very different homes with very different incomes and very different resources, but that you could do a project in a local area where everyone's working towards the same goals, and that brings everyone under the same umbrella. We've all got the same goals, we're working towards the same vision, and it breaks down those barriers, the disconnect not just between people and nature, but the disconnect between people and people.
A Biosphere Reserve will undertake to do certain flagship projects, something that will make its mark felt quite nationally. Do you want to initiate projects that are going to make a positive difference? So you can, we've got the eco schools, we've got the blue flag beaches, we've also got alien eradication programs. All of these projects add value and meaning to a person's life. because it creates jobs. Whatever difference that can make to people within a biosphere reserve is a plus. And then obviously not forgetting that of the natural resources being used, wise utilisation of those natural resources is of paramount importance. The garden route is full of rich biodiversity. When we see certain developments that may come across our desk as being irresponsible and not sustainable, a biosphere will give us the teeth to be able to say these sorts of things should not actually be taking place.
We're trying to connect protected areas by means of conservation corridors. That is in order to protect ecosystems. So between those are little bits of private land. And a lot of it is really remote. There is, of course, beautiful vegetation. It's known this corridor is the most biodiverse corridor on the planet.
When you mention the word reserve, people automatically just assume it's got to do with plants and it's got to do with animals, and it's a fenced area that is a nature area which is just under conservation. But it's actually not. A biosphere reserve is a completely different concept. A biosphere reserve has got to do with people in living landscapes. A biosphere reserve has got to do with social upliftment. A biosphere reserve has got to do with a lot to do actually with public participation and collaboration.
We've got rolling grasslands coming in right down from the centre of southern Africa. Other side of the mountains we get bushveld, which goes up into North Africa. And then in little pockets still, there is still Afro-montane forest. So we've got three biomes coming together. We have a social situation in this country which will not allow pure environmental conservation in a sort of pristine way to survive. We've got too many pressures on it. So there has to be a negotiation and a working out. And that's what biospheres do. That's what they're good at.
We need to be able to utilize part of the environment, whether it's for commercial gain or just to be able to be out there to experience that wilderness aspect of the area. And the more of these links we have between different biospheres, between different parks, and it also means that the biosphere must also integrate with national parks in the area or game reserves in the area.
I think biospheres are less about environment and spaces, and biospheres are communities, because conservation happens by itself if you leave it to itself. Nature can look after itself. The thing that we're challenged by is how do we live in nature without nature succumbing to our efforts. So if you're in a biosphere and your objective is to find ways to be sustainable and find ways to keep nature going while you're making a good living, well, then it has to boil down to communities. It has to boil down to how we commune with each other and with nature.
The Magaliesberg Biosphere has got 4 or 5 conservancies in its buffer area, and I think they are a good support base for maintaining and shall I say, the essence of a biosphere, the essence of the value of the ecosystems. So it's able to do that, and it's able to link individuals into the greater effort of conservation and appropriate development.
One woman asked me, she said, how the hell could you stop all these things? I said, it's not an individual, it's not me, it's not Anthony, it's not a little committee, but it's a community getting together.
I was a commander in MK. I'm a revolutionary. Revolutionaries don't have color. Revolutionary got intellect and systems and policies and where they want to go. It's about a greater philosophy. It's about a greater belief. And color don't define that. Color is equal to me. I'm not interested in you two if you're whiteys. I'm interested in what is in your brain, what is in your thoughts, what is in your heart, is what is in your soul. In the communities that I work, they need mentoring. And they would need mentoring for some of these projects. And as the mentoring goes on, the idea within that mentoring process is to basically skill them up to basically go and look around in their town. What what biosphere projects they could undertake, and yes, we could assist them and be part of that project, but at the end of the day they will have to project manage that project themselves.
I can manage a project. You can leave it to me. I know exactly what to do. A lot of people, they have problems, leaks, and a lot of these people's accounts are very high on water, and you don't pay, they switch off your your power. That is a policy. So myself and Charles decided that we're going to start the war on leaks here. Some houses, there are 15 people in a house. You can understand in such a small home, 15 people. The infrastructure can't hold out. The government put in assistance of 9 liters. Now you don't need so much water to flush down P, you see. So now we have this system of 6 liters. They're using now lesser water. The counts are lesser even in my house.
For some people, tells me, yes, but you're a bright guy, you could go and get your job for 50 or 60, 70,000. But so what? I mean, that's not interested. I mean, that wouldn't in that would chase the out of me, because it cannot meet my objectives of my life. You know, it will make me money, but it will not give me honey. So I rather want the honey. You know, I want to run a small project to give meaning to 12 people, to make their lives. And when I make their life great and I make their lives something to live for, I grow. And yes, they make money and I don't make money, but that's not the point. The point is we all grow.
Two years ago, we set up the Western Cape Biosphere Forum. The thing of the forum is to find holistic problems. We're the source of 7 rivers. So if we don't do our job at the top of the Berg River, West Cape Biosphere Reserve is going to pick up the problem down there because it flows to that. On the other side, Palmeet starts in our area and it goes into the Kukuberg Biospheres. And so the birds, migration, everything else. So you cannot look at a biosphere as an entity in its own.
So initially the emphasis was on conservation. We tried to stop development, but then later on we realized that development, sustainable development, is part and parcel of a biosphere reserve's function. And now we are going full ahead to get projects going in the area, especially to among the poorest of the poor communities. Them realize the importance of living in a biosphere reserve and that it can be of value to them.
The pressure on our natural resources is so immense that there's simply just too many people on the planet. This whole interaction between the man and his environment on these special places must be managed in a way so that it's still sustainable and it's also protected. For the last 200 years, basically, we have protected areas. We have game parks, we have all sorts of different forms. Our own Kruger National Park is over 100 years old. These things have been with us all these years for animals, to keep animals in, and still it didn't really help. You just look where the rhino population is today and all these other animals that's on the verge of extinction. So we're getting to a point now where in this coming century where fences is not going to keep people out anymore and animals in anymore.
We have over 3,000 plant species inside the Wembe Biosphere. This is very close to what they have in the whole of Canada. I mean, we're still scratching the surface here, but that's what we know of. In terms of tree species, and many of them are medicinal plants, 594 tree species. If you look at fish species, 43 fish species, we've got 44 reptile species, we've got 152 mammal species. Now, why is it important? If you do not have diverseness in the natural environment, you're going to sit with a scenario where if climate change, you will find that the species that fulfilled a specific function, let's say pollination, if that species is taken out of the system and you don't have another species, or of course you have a diversity of species that can take its place, that niche, pollinating flowers and making fruit for us, then you're going to be poor. So the countries with the highest biodiversity, or the regions with the high biodiversity, will be able to take the changing effect of global climate change much better and have still a healthy system, or fairly healthy system. So for human existence, biodiversity is important. But biodiversity also brings in money. We have people coming from all over the world to this region. So that can benefit communities.
Biospheres can have benefits to the ordinary person. And that, to me, is one of the critical aspects, because the shortcoming of biospheres, the very job you're doing, is to what extent does it reach the masses, is the question that really should be posed. The area to the north of the mountain, Soutpansberg, is largely game farms, and they're privately owned. You then got towards the Toyando area, most of the 1.5 million people living there, and the remnant of the old Venda homeland. So you've got these two dynamics of a major portion, the largest by far, of the area, privately owned and reasonably well maintained wildlife. And then you've got your old remnant of apartheid South Africa.
The VBR's intention is not to be a policing system. And we understand that farmers have got it tough. There's very little subsidies, so they have to make it on their own. And at the end of the day, like I said, if no farmer, no food, or no textiles. So we need farmers. We're not, certainly as a VBR, we are partners with farmers. We're not against farmers. Although there are certain practices which are not sustainable, and those we like to address in a soft way, a soft approach, through education and awareness.
When you go and teach people, it's not something that happens overnight. It's something that you do continuously, and then you see changes slowly. If K2C wasn't here, people would damage the environment, and they would see that they're damaging the environment, and would continue to damage the environment.
You can be an everyday change maker. That me, in my own little world, when I'm driving the traffic jam to take my children to school, and then I'm going to the shops, and then I'm going to go to my home office, and I'm going to do the work that I need to do to put the food on the table for when my children come home, that in my world I can affect change.
I guess this is a great opportunity for us to build social cohesion. And if we could build social cohesion in that biosphere, we will basically transport those energies into communities.
Above all, if you really talk about this, what is biospheres about? It's a change of attitude. Forget about core areas, buffer zones, this, that, indigenous knowledge and all that. Those are instruments, necessary. But what is it? It's how do you change people's attitude towards life?